Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode 7 of FPL Hotline. I'm your host, Matt Tomo, joined as always by Tazz, Gasch, and C4. What's up, guys?
Hey,
All right, so let's talk a little bit about game week 2. We had a pretty exciting game week, a lot of goals, a lot of goals. What caught your eye, Tazz? Anything? What's your main takeaway from game week 2?
With a lot of goals, I also saw a lot of penalty kicks from going to game week 2, from game week 1 and continue game week 2. Kind of makes me think of to consider more of like the penalty takers for the teams. Another quick thing I noticed was Justin Mitchell, both budget options returned points again 2 game weeks in a row. Making me kind of proving that budget options can be consistent and outscoring some even premium assets. But it's too early to just fully go into the budget defenders. I'll still give, some people have the double up on like Liverpool, still give it a chance. They did return a clean sheet. And then my last thing was, predicted Barnes was to like go off after having great underlying numbers game week 1. Which he did return points and, currently has the third highest touches in the opponent's box after 2 game weeks. And all of his 10 shots came inside the box. So somebody on my watch list.
Awesome. Gash, how about you?
I'm thankful for a couple of things. I'm thankful to Jorginho for missing a penalty because I have double Liverpool defense, and that saved me a lot of points right there. My boy KWP, who I was very high on in the preseason, got an assist and also conceded 5 goals, but I'm not really going to focus on that. I'm just really happy about the assist he got. Che Adams has had an expected goal of 0.92 against Spurs, and Lloris pulled off a crazy save to stop him from scoring there. So I think he's been really unlucky not to score. He's also missed the most big chances of any FPL forward. He's missed 3 in 2 games. So he's certainly getting the chances. It's a question of whether he'll be able to start finishing them and returning points. And finally, for myself, I had none of my bench players play. I had a couple of injuries and a 4.5 million midfield fodder not playing. So for me, it's been a struggle of trying to avoid using my wild card too early because I don't want to. And I think I've managed to do that for at least another week or 2.
Yeah. Good point about Che Adams. It's tough to see him missing so many chances. It's like, is it bad luck or is it just bad finishing? What do you think?
Yeah. I'm hoping bad luck
Yeah.
at this point, so that he can eventually turn it around and start returning.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping too, because he dropped to 5.9. So if he can start returning at that price, he's going to be sick. I'm holding on to him a little longer. C4, how about you? What are your main takeaways from the week?
3 takeaways. Never Captain Aubameyang. 2, Spurs are for real. I was just wrong about which offensive assets to own. And 3, I was pretty happy not making any transfers for game week 2 and just holding until game week 3 to get a better sense of my team.
I think you're the highest scoring out of the 4 of us so far. So congrats for that.
Yeah, as expected.
Well, I don't know about that.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. Yeah. I just want to remind all our listeners, if you're feeling down about your first 2 weeks, like I am, don't worry about it.
Just quit now.
No, don't quit. It gets better. Just keep fighting. All right, so let's move on to my big recap from game week 2. I'm a little worried about Chelsea assets. I really am, but we'll talk about that a little later. So moving on to a player debate here. We got 2 City assets, KDB and Sterling, both priced at 11.5 mil. A lot of debate this past week or this week about which one to pick because a lot of people are doing Alba to a City asset this week. So, I personally have KDB. Tazz, I know you have KDB as well, and Gash, you have KDB. C4, you're the one with Sterling, so I'll let you start. Why don't you give us some insight into why you went with Sterling over KDB?
So I knew going into the season before game week 1 that this would be the week I bring in. Sterling, I knew Alba to any City asset would have been the move. And from my looking at numbers and research, and I wanted Sterling. And when you look into, for me, the reason was when you look into his post-restart numbers last year, in comparison to KDB per 90 minutes, he averaged 10.2 points per 90 and expected points of 8.42. When you compare that to Sterling, he was at 12.17 points per 90, and he had an expected points of 8.78. So I feel like it's a good differential to have long-term, but also now if you're starting to look at City, like midfielders going down like butterflies, but you have Bernardo Silva out, and then you have Goodwin out. It's kind of unpredictable. Where does Pep have to use KDB now? Like, will he stick in that 10, or does he have to move further back? Also, prior to this week, I was reading a thread on if you look at Sterling's production with Jesus as City's main striker versus Aguero, it's a lot higher, like considerably.
It's a lot higher with Jesus.
Yeah. So
Right.
with Aguero being out, I think now it's for a minimum like another month. I feel like it's a good move to have him in the lineup.
Interesting. So it's not a full season move for you. It's just right now because of.
I think it'll be a full season move. Like, I think it'll be my set and forget City asset. But I think in the short term, it also makes sense.
I think KDB's outscored him each of the last 2 or 3 seasons, though. What makes you think it's going to be different this time around?
I don't think he's outscored him the last 2 or 3 seasons. I think it was only the last one, but that's a different conversation for another day.
I think I meant to say 2 out of the last 3, I think is the correct.
Well, I'll just say that my prediction going into the year was that Sterling's going to be the highest scoring FPL player, and I still feel good about that.
Yeah, you have been talking about him since day one, so I'll give you that. Gash, why don't you tell us about why you have KDB?
Yeah, so I was, I think I was closer in this KDB versus Sterling debate now than I thought it would be before the season. I could see the merits of owning Sterling. My reason for picking KDB is that I think he's a much more consistent player. Sterling tends to be a lot streakier in terms of, when he's hitting form, he's really scoring a good amount of goals, but even then it's not necessarily like, a goal per game-ish. He's the type of player who will score, a brace or a hat trick and then blank for the next 2 game weeks. So he seems like a much more frustrating player to own. I think KDB is, really just, again, the consistency. And also, C4 kind of touched on it. We saw KDB playing as like a number 10 against Wolves in their first game of the season, as opposed to his normal like center mid role. He was playing further up the pitch. And I think that's probably not going to continue. He made a comment himself about how he's pretty sure Pep only did that because Wolves play a back 3. With most teams in the Premier League playing a back 4, it's not something to really count on, I don't think. But also, as C4 also touched on, there's the consideration of C4 of City's players being out with a couple of injuries, so maybe it's something where he will stick there for the foreseeable future as a necessity. And then Sterling, I did see the same thing about Sterling with Jesus versus with Aguero. So I think what I would say about Sterling is that if there's a time to own him, it's probably now before Aguero comes back and is firing on all cylinders.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yeah, so maybe take Sterling for now and then switch to KDB later. I could see that. But Tazz, what do you think?
Kind of the same page with Gash in terms of KDB being the more consistent player and Sterling just being more kind of like a streaky player. He'll be hot one game and then not return any points. KDB always gets racks up those assists. Even in this game, we saw him playing that number 10 role. He was the most, almost like the whole City offense went through him kind of. He had the most touches in the opponent's third as well as in the box from City, and he took the most shots for City, 4, and all 4 being on target. He did take the penalty for them, so that kind of another reason why I would prefer to own him over Sterling. I feel like Sterling is a great differential pick if you want to go for a differential pick right now. But I think KDB is more of a consistent and more of like a solid player in my opinion that I can easily, I'm captain him even against Leicester, and that's something we can get on about later on. But my goal is KDB.
When Sterling's on, he looks like he could be in the conversation for best player in the Prem, but the problem is he's not on all the time. I'm also going with KDB. I also want that consistency week in, week out, give him the armband most of the time. Maybe not most of the time, but probably like half the time. I just feel like it's a more solid and I feel like there's a slightly lower risk that he gets subbed out or rotated than Sterling. I mean, Sterling's pretty nailed as well, but like he has a slight chance to get affected by the Pep rotation wheel, in my opinion. All right, any final points? Good.
I looked it up. In the last 3 seasons, KDB's only outscored Sterling once.
Really?
I think
Wow.
he may have had a higher points per game. Maybe was it 2 years ago when he had his long injury? So maybe that's what you were thinking of.
Maybe, yeah. All right, so let's move on from that discussion into Everton. Everton have been looking good. They brought in some new talent. Some of their old talent is starting to peak. James Rodriguez has looked amazing. Dominic Calvert-Lewin has looked amazing as well. Bagged the hat trick this week. Richarlison's been great. So yeah, those are the main three. A lot of people have Digne as well, but out of those three attacking assets, it's kind of a tough decision. They're priced a little differently. Calvert-Lewin started at 7, but he's up to 7.2 now. Or did he rise again last night? He's still at 7.2? I think he's still at 7.2. Yeah.
Right now.
So he's at 7.2. Richarlison's at 8, and James is at 7.5. Somehow he didn't rise either. Yeah, so all kind of similarly priced. They're within the same 0.8 of each other. How do we feel? Tazz, you want to start us off? Which Everton asset would you rather have?
I think they're all great. I think James is a very interesting option because he comes out at such a cheap price of 7.5, and he's kind of outscoring a lot of more expensive midfield options. It's kind of like you can downgrade like somebody like a 9 million or 8.5 million Chelsea asset down to James and have
like
that
a Havertz maybe. Yeah.
And then have that 1 million to upgrade, like a 5 or like a budget option in midfield or elsewhere. So, James is a really interesting pick for me. Before I was kind of like, I was thinking like after game week 1, I was kind of thinking, Calvert-Lewin's a little bit lucky to turn goals and Richarlison wasn't, because, Calvert-Lewin didn't even score any goal, I believe, after restart. So, it's kind of like high Richarlison, but, after this game week, Calvert was not that much far off from Richarlison in terms of shots and, goal threat. But I still, I will consider him, but I still think Richarlison is the best option out of all of them. He's unlucky to be the least scoring out of them 3, but he does have most shots significantly. And I feel like, going forward, when he does hit form, he'd be very dangerous.
Gash?
Yeah, so I was speaking of transferring out a Chelsea asset for Thomas. That's exactly what I did over the weekend. I had Pulisic from the start of the season, trying to get ahead of everyone and anticipate when he was coming back from his injury. But then he hurt himself again, so I immediately brought in James because I thought he was going to price rise, and he didn't. So I'm a little annoyed at that. But anyway, the reason why I brought in James is because he looks very central to Everton's attack. I think there are days where either DCL could haul and Richarlison blanks or vice versa. And it might be a little hard to predict, although they'll both end up scoring a decent amount of points in the end. But again, kind of for the same reason I went for KDB over Sterling, I'd rather have those consistent returns. And I think James will always be, there will be times where he plays the pass before the assist and doesn't get any FPL points for it. But I think that he's going to be involved enough to warrant picking him. And we also don't know who's on penalties yet for Everton. It's probably going to be either James or Richarlison. And then between the two forwards, I took a quick look. So Richarlison does dominate DCL in terms of penalty area touches. It's 23-9. But the important thing to note there is that DCL isn't the type of player to take a lot of touches in the box. He's the type of scrapper that'll get you the dirty goals like down in the 6-yard box or within the penalty spot. So that's not really representative of what's going to be happening. In terms of shots inside the box, Richarlison actually has the most of all forwards with 10, and DCL has 8, which is second most of all forwards. So they're both getting a lot of shots inside the box. And I think at those numbers, with how close they are, that I'd rather go with DCL and save the money than bringing in Richarlison.
C4, what do you think?
I think all 3 are very good assets to have right now. I guess my only point is, and the reason why I've already brought in James like Gasch, is it all depends what works into your price structure for your team. So for me, it'd be very hard to bring in like a $7 to $8 million striker that just doesn't fit into my team. Whereas a 7.5 midfielder, that's a lot easier to balance out, a lot easier to bring in. And throughout the season, I think that provides you more flexibility for transfers. Someone at that 7-8, unless you're going to like a Jimenez or downgrading to a budget striker, there's not a lot of transfers you can really make laterally with that number up top. In midfield, there's a lot more options, and I think that's why James is the most valuable option.
Yeah, so I used my wild card this week, which I'll get into a little bit later. But I wanted an Everton asset, so I was going through this in my head this week, trying to decide between the three of them. And yeah, I think Richarlison is a little better than Calvert-Lewin, and I think we can expect him to return more consistently. I'm a little worried that we're seeing the peak of Calvert-Lewin really early with that hat trick. I'm not sure that's something we can expect week in and week out. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I saw that he was like right around the top of achieving his expected goal rate. So he's playing a little better than expected right now. Kind of just been really in form. And I feel like it might be a little too late to get in on that. He already rose in price twice. And I just felt like using those funds on James would make a lot more sense, just 0.3 higher. And I just felt like he would be the more consistent player all season long. Yeah, I really like what he's been doing. He's been playing a little bit like KDB was this past weekend. He's been tried out in a couple of different positions as well. He's playing that like an attacking 8. He played a little bit in the number 10. He was even attacking a bit from the wing that I saw. So, yeah, he just seems involved in everything they do. And if he can get on free kicks and penalties, I know he's splitting corners now with Digne, it looks like, so that's exciting. And also seems to be splitting free kicks with him. So we'll see. Yeah, but James is definitely my pick. I did pick him to go into my team this week, and I think he's the best Everton asset. All right, moving on to ASM, C4's favorite. He got injured this past weekend. The manager says it's not too bad, though, but it does look like he'll miss a week or two or possibly even a little more. They're still being a little bit up in the air about it. You know, we don't have all the full details in front of us, but it could be long enough that you might have to think about getting a replacement in. But thankfully, there are a lot of really good midfielders in that 5 to 5.5 range that you can look at. You got Podence from Wolves. You got Souček from West Ham. Who else? Who else is in that range? Tazz, you looking at anybody else in that 5 to 5.5 range?
To be honest, it's kind of weird range right now because a lot of players, kind of Podence, is one guy that kind of comes to mind. But at the same time, with Wolves signing Semedo and now looking like Traore will play up higher, you never know if Podence will get rotated or not. Kind of the thought I had was that some Leeds assets at that price range are looking pretty good, like Costa and I believe Cleach. Cleach being on penalties. I think he converted 2 penalties from game week 1 and 2. That's somebody I would kind of consider for 5.5. A better strategy if you do have ASM, and you have 2 transfers, don't want to transfer anyone else in. We kind of talked about downgrading some of those from Chelsea or whatever type of midfielders to like James. This is where I would use the 1 million or however much to upgrade from ASM to like a 6-point priced midfielder. There's like Townsend from Crystal Palace that I believe is a pretty good asset. Same thing with Trossard from Brighton. Those 2 guys kind of like stick out for me.
I actually, I think I kind of disagree with you. I think there's a lot of value in that 5.5 range. Like you said, you got Costa and Cleach, and I was excited about both of them. Cleach being on pens is very exciting. I don't think Podence is going to get rotated as much as people think with the Semedo signing. I think that'll affect Nato a little more, and that will affect some other players. But from what I'm seeing and what I'm reading from Wolves fans and just all over the Twitter and Reddit, it seems that Podence has a shot here to keep his spot and not get affected by that transfer. So I went with Podence this week on my wild card out of those options. He's been playing out of his mind, and at 5.5, especially getting those Wolves clean sheet points as well, they have a really, really favorable stretch coming up. So if you can get him in, I think he's my pick. And if you are only using him as an ASM replacement anyway, if he does eventually lose minutes to Semedo, that's not the worst thing in the world because you can use him now for this really good Wolves stretch and to cover for ASM. Gash, you want to add anything onto that?
Yeah, so you touched a little bit on the Leeds players, and I wanted to say I thought the same thing, and I took a look at some of the numbers there. And Leeds actually have the 3rd worst expected goals in the league of any team that's played both games. So
wow.
Between those couple of players, I think it was like Harrison Klic, and Costa were the three kind of around 5.5 million that people are considering. They've scored something like 5 goals from 6 shots in the box, or along those lines, like a totally ridiculous rate that I think Bielsa even came out in an interview and said, "Yeah, we're not going to continue this scoring rate like we have been." So I after I saw all that, I backed away from those. And I also do have ASM in my team right now, and I kept him in there this week, and I'm just going to bench him so I didn't have to take a hit to remove him. I looked at Potence as well. And like you guys were mentioning, I think the biggest thing putting me off is the rotation potential, not just because of trying to get other players to play. It's also because Nuno likes to switch up the formation depending on who they're playing. So a lot of times last season, we saw them go between a 3-4-3 and a 3-5-2. And I'm just not entirely sure. If I had to pick right now, I would say Potence is going to partner Jimenez up top in like a 3-5-2 or something. But I'm not entirely sure that he will, just because I'm not a Premier League manager. I don't understand the tactics as well as those guys do. So there might be a very good reason why Potence would be left to the bench there. And because of that uncertainty, I would think I personally would rather do what Tazz mentioned and save some money. And save money elsewhere and upgrade like an ASM to someone in like the 6.5 to 7 million range.
All right, C4.
Yeah, so I'm in the same boat as Gash. I'm benching ASM this week just because I don't want to take a hit on a transfer. So playing with the 4-3-3. My logic now, I think, is just because I've been looking at Potence since before game week 1-2, is it kind of makes sense even if ASM gets healthy to transfer him out for the next 3 or 4 game weeks, because you look at Newcastle's fixtures, it's Tottenham, Burnley, United, and then Wolves. And after that, from game weeks 7 to 14, they have way better fixtures. So to even just give Potence that, let's call it 3 or 4 week tryout period, I think would work out and give a better indication of if he's in my set and forget slot at 5.5 for my team.
I mean, his next 5-game stretch coming up is West Ham, Fulham, Leeds, Newcastle, and Palace. All of them are a fixture rating of 2 on the FPL site. Yeah, that's a solid stretch. It gets a little harder after that, but
compare that to ASM, it's golden.
What's up?
Compare that to ASM, that's golden. That's what you want for 5.5.
Yeah. And knowing that Wolves do have the clean sheet potential anytime they hit the field, the Potence is my pick. Just looking at the other midfielders in the range, there's really not much to go from. The guys we just mentioned are pretty much the only options. Or like Tazz and Gash said, you got to go up in like $1 million to the next range. But let's move on here and let's go up to that next range and talk about the 6.5 to 7.5 midfielders. Who's the best? Who are you looking at? Who do you have in your team currently? Let me pull up some names here from the 6.5 to 7.5 range. So you got guys like Zaha, James, like we talked about. Actually, it's showing here that James did go up to 7.6. So that's interesting. But yeah, so we got James.
The price rises were about 10 minutes ago, so it must have just kicked in.
They probably just happened. So yeah, James just went up to 7.6. All right, so James is up. But so we got Zaha in that range. We got James. We got who else is in that range? Foden is in that range. I almost said Potence again, but Foden. Yeah, Tazz, what are you looking at there?
There's kind of 3.5, I guess, in a way for me that I'm considering that range. I think Zaha, you mentioned, James, but also really big on Barnes from Leicester, and the kind of half is Foden. Just because I'm uncertainty of he kind of looks right now with City having some injuries, he's kind of starting, but I could see him being rotated the most out of City's starting 11 that they showed in game week 2. My favorite pick out of the 3, if I had to choose, will be James for the reasons we mentioned beforehand. Plus, Everton's I think more of a solid team than Crystal Palace and Leicester are right now. But Zaha, out of in that budget range, he has scored the most points out of all those midfielders, as well as he's a labeled as a midfielder, but he's playing up top in a 2-striker formation. So he's more chances of scoring. And then, Harvey Barnes just has great underlying stats. And, Leicester has, I believe after Man City, they've run a pretty nice fixture stats, make me really interested in him.
Yeah, I definitely should have mentioned Barnes. He had 13 points last week, played the full 90. What else did he do? An assist and a goal, right? Yeah, a goal and assist and played the full 90. 13 points for Barnes. Definitely a good option too. Gash, what are you looking at?
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot. This has probably been my main focus point for the past week with ASM. Trying to get him out of my team somehow and focusing on looking at what to do. And like I said, I was thinking about upgrading him to a higher player, a higher price player. So I was looking at all these names, and Foden right now I think is too much rotation potential. I can certainly see why you'd be going for him at his price, and with the possible returns he can get you. But I just don't think it's something I'd want to risk right now. Barnes actually he's tied with Salah for the most shots inside the box for midfielders with 10. He has the second most touches in the box for midfielders with 18, and only Salah has more. Zaha has also looked really good. He has the third most overall shots in the box with Mane and Son. So those are, like the typical, like much higher price players that you're comparing him to, which is really good for his price tag. I do have, one or two dark horses as well. I think Jack Grealish is one to keep an eye on. He's at 7 million right now. And Villa just signed Ali Watkins from the Championship a few weeks back, and then Traore, a right winger from France, I believe they signed him. So if that team can get clicking, he's going to be playing. He'll be the one setting up the chances for those kind of guys, and maybe scoring some of those goals as well. And then the other player I'm actually starting to look at is Under, who just signed for Leicester. He's a right winger. He's only 6 million. And with Perez typically plays a lot better through the middle. So I wonder what Rodgers' long-term plan is, if it's to play like a 4-3-3, because if it is with some kind of right winger, I think Under could be the one who is nailed in that Leicester attack. And I think he could be, Harvey Barnes is a good option for his price, but I think Under could be an even cheaper version of Harvey Barnes to, also save some funds.
Dude, that's a good point. But do you think he might need some time to get used to the Prem and get used to the squad? Is he somebody you can bring in right now for an ASM replacement, or is he just somebody to keep your eye on?
He's somebody I'm going to keep my eye on for the next couple of weeks, at least until he's getting minutes and we can see how Leicester start lining up once all their players return from injury. I don't want to have to bring him in now and then, if Pereira comes back and they switch the formation and then he's on the bench all of a sudden to have to deal with that. So it's definitely more something I'm keeping my eye on, but one I think could be a potential, a really good player.
I'm reading here. Brendan Rodgers has not confirmed that he'll even be available for City this weekend. Definitely taking his time getting used to England, getting used to the team, which is to be expected, obviously, especially for somebody so young. C4, who are you looking at in this range?
It's really three names that have already been mentioned: James, Zaha, and Barnes. Outside of those three, to me, those are all lateral moves in my team. That space between, let's call it 5.5 to 7 in between there is kind of weird for me. I'm not really looking at any 6 or 6.5 options. At that point, I think I'd rather just keep my 5.5 and upgrade my defense.
I want to talk about Phil Foden. I feel really good about Phil Foden. I was listening to Pep speak about him as well, and a lot of people were expecting Foden to kind of line up as a David Silva-esque replacement, even though not easy to replace somebody of his quality, obviously. But he was the one slated to take some of those minutes away. And Pep was saying, obviously the rotation is a risk with Foden, with any City asset, but especially someone like Foden. But he looked really, really good this weekend, and he wasn't playing back. He is not the type of midfielder who likes to sit back and stay outside of the box, kind of create for others. He loves to dart in, and that's what Pep was talking about, how much he loves to follow the play and finish things up at the end. And we saw that's how he got his goal. He made a great run into the box and followed the play longer than some other players might have, and it worked out for him. And that's just the kind of attitude he brings to the pitch and the way he plays. And Pep was praising him a lot, and I was reading a lot from City supporters. If anybody can predict some of Pep's rotations, I guess I'll listen to City supporters over anyone else. They have the most experience dealing with with that. And they said that they even think that Foden might be trusted more so than Mahrez at this point in time, which I thought was a bit shocking. But the way he looked this past week and at that price point, and me knowing that I have Potence's cover, I did take in Foden, and I feel good about him at 6.5. And if he starts getting those minutes, and it is true that he's trusted more than Mahrez, and he's going to be getting those minutes, and he's going to keep following the plays the way he did, and I could see him scoring double-digit goals this season and being really, really good value at 6.5 mil. And nothing crazy. I could see him scoring like 10 or 11 goals. But you take that at 6.5 mil for sure. So that's my pick out of that range. Anybody want to add anything else?
Yeah, how about Mason Greenwood at 6.5? Is that somebody you guys would consider for this price range?
I think so. I think he's 7.5. By the way, just
7.5.
Oh yeah.
For me, no. For me, no. But let's go to the United fan, Gash.
Well, I mean, until Sancho signs, I think it's Greenwood's.
Have you given up on that?
What's that?
Have you given up on Sancho coming yet?
No. Tazz is coming in at left back, and then Sancho's the final signing of the window.
Okay.
At least in my fantasy land, and soon to be real life. But anyway, it's Ollie likes to with the younger players kind of integrate them more slowly. And I think the reason we saw a lot of Greenwood last year was because of his goal scoring form. He became, practically undroppable. And I think that's the reason why they really wanted Sancho, has been the number one target for so long, is to give some depth to that right wing spot so that you don't have to rely on Mason Greenwood starting every single week, who's, developing into a really good player, but he's still only 18, and he's really more of a, an inside forward / center striker. So I think that we're going to see him more restrained a little bit this season. I think they were playing him that many minutes post restart, especially out of necessity, more so than because who do you have coming in there? Dan James is a good squad player, but he's a left winger, and and he's also not someone you necessarily want to see starting every single week. He's much less effective against low blocks, which United play against probably like 75% of the time in the league. So I don't think so. For 7.5 million, I think I would rather have Foden in my team at 6.5 with the risk of rotation. If United go through the window and somehow in some crazy way don't sign Jadon Sancho, then I think Greenwood will become a lot more viable. But then I'd be really worried about what's going on behind the scenes, where the team is screaming for a right winger, and if they're not developing or delivering that the board to the team, then I think there could be it might just be something to keep an eye on, where it kind of affects how the players play.
Yeah, I just want to say it's pretty funny. You said that that United would have to bring him in for some depth on the wing. Have to bring in Jadon Sancho for some depth. I think he'll be a little bit more than a depth.
No. I said to create depth, because he'd be the starter and you'd have backups there then.
Right. So Greenwood is a little priced out for me personally at 7.5. Last season, what was he, like 4.5? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was exciting. I had him last season at that price, but 7.5 is a lot, because then you're comparing him to, he's more expensive than Zaha, who's going off. He's the same price as James. When you're comparing him with players like that, I just don't see him getting those kind of returns consistently yet. I like him as a player. I think he'll be great, but a little too young, and the minutes aren't guaranteed there to rely on him for 7.5 mil. If he was down at 5.5 or maybe even 6, I would give him. I would have to think really hard between him and Foden there. But yeah, he's just priced out for me. But C4, what do you think?
Yeah, not even considering any United asset right now.
Yeah, they're not looking good. A little scary. Gash, you scared?
No, it's one game. One game is a data point, not a trend.
All right. Tazz?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would consider him at this price range, being cheap. If he's nailed on, starts getting regular minutes, regular 90 minutes for sure, I think, it'd be a cheap way to get into that Man United attack. But I also believe, I think it's just one game, and I think United are going to pick it up, especially with the run of fixtures they have.
Yeah, it is just one game. That's true. But switching gears here, for Chelsea, it's been 2 games, and it has not been looking great. Is it time to panic for Chelsea and for Chelsea assets going into the season? There was talk about Havertz and Pulisic and Werner and Ziyech, and they were just exciting, and they looked like they were going to be scoring a lot of goals. And 2 weeks is still a pretty small data point, but it has not looked good at all. They have not been creating. Havertz is playing too far back, although he looked really good in the League Cup today, I will say. But yeah, is it time to panic for Chelsea? Tazz?
I don't think so. You got to take into account two of their fixtures. The first game, they played game week 1. They played against Brighton and they won 3-1. None of those. Pulisic is still injured now, so he didn't even get a chance to play. Havertz is the only one that I was kind of like consider, maybe like bailing on him and taking him out. He's yet to take a shot, I believe, in the both games. I don't think he played a full 90 in either game, though. I have Werner currently in my team. I'm still keeping him. He returned only 1 assist in these 2 games, but the second game it was against a Liverpool team who were pretty much almost fully they're fully fit against the Chelsea squad. They're still missing Pulisic and Ziyech, which I believe once those 2 guys come back, they will it'll be a total different team. So I'm kind of holding off on Werner. I still he's if you look at his heat map, he's kind of all over the box, and I think he's kind of unlucky not to return a goal in these first 2 game weeks. And going forward, I think I'm still giving him a couple more weeks chances before I take him out. He plays West Brom next week. Then he plays Crystal Palace at home, which I think are I think after that game week 4, I'll be, if he still has yet not to return points and Chelsea are looking worse and worse, then maybe that's when I'll take him out.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way about Werner. He's actually looked decent. He's looked the best out of all the assets, in my opinion. I had Havertz, but I took him out. I'm holding on to Werner this week. Really good matchup against West Brom. Might even captain him this week. I'm giving that some consideration, but we'll get into that later. I'm giving Werner a couple more weeks, and if he doesn't return, he's out. And as for the rest of the assets and for Chelsea in general, I think we just have to wait. We have, like you said, Taz, we got to wait for Pulisic and Ziyech to come back, and we got to wait for them to be fully healthy. It has not looked good, but it's not time to panic. Maybe get some of those. Maybe get Havertz out of your team if you want, or with the way he played in the League Cup today, maybe hold on to him. Definitely not time to panic yet. Gash, what are you thinking?
So speaking of captaining Werner, after I was reading about how he was looking so far and how West Brom have been looking in the opposite way, bad, I think I might be captaining him this weekend. So he has 5 shots in the box, which is the 5th most of all forwards, 12 touches in the penalty area, which is tied for the 4th most of all forwards. So, I was looking at that and I was like, okay, he's still, doing pretty well. He's getting the chances and everything. Maybe they're not extremely clear cut yet, but we know he's a deadly finisher from the Bundesliga. I think he finished last season with, somewhere in the high 20s in goals. It was 26 or 27, I believe. And then looking on the other side of things, West Brom they've expected goals conceded. So just expected goals on the other side of more than 7 after just 2 games, which is absurd. That's like Norwich, post lockdown crap form that they're in right now. And the other thing I was looking at is, like you mentioned, Havertz has not been solid so far in the Premier League, but he did just score a hat trick today against Barnsley. And Barnsley is, it's not a surprise. Barnsley.
Who?
Barnsley, man.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a surprise that Chelsea walked all over them. But sometimes in like a player's mindset, even when they get going against the worst team, they just start hitting form, and it just takes them to the next level where they can start creating the chances and maybe even having the confidence to attempt like a risky pass. So I'm seriously considering captaining Werner this weekend, and I think I'm going to hold him for at least a couple more weeks. Southampton. Werner's the type of player that likes to make the runs in behind. And they play Southampton in just a few weeks. And we saw what Son did to Southampton when, another player that likes to make runs in behind Southampton's high line. So if Southampton don't change their style, I think that's another week I'd consider captaining Werner as well.
Yeah, you brought up his Bundesliga stats. I just wanted to say real quick, he had 28 goals and 8 assists in the league. So he's not somebody who just scores goals. He also likes to be involved in the build-up. And it could be really enticing once they have all those other attacking assets all running around together. Then Werner looks to be a solid option for all that. And yeah, definitely don't give up on Kai Havertz yet. It's definitely a confidence thing with him. The kid's still just 21 years old, moving to a new country and everything. And a hat trick, even against a lowly team like that, could be enough to get him going and then light that fire under him. C4, are you panicking if you're Frank Lampard and Chelsea?
I mean, from an FPL perspective, I'm not panicking because I don't own any Chelsea assets. But I think I said this before game week 1 that I kind of saw Chelsea not being a viable FPL option for a couple of game weeks just because we didn't know how things would shake out. To me, I would only think that from the attacking 6, Werner and Pulisic would be the only ones I would consider. Pulisic, obviously, not anymore, but Werner is a solid option. To me, it was only for my team, it was him or Kane. I think Kane will outscore him over like the first 8 or 9 game weeks. But yeah, if I'm looking at Chelsea FPL assets right now, it's either Werner, Pulisic, or if you're looking to get on their defense, a little bit of James.
Yeah. I mean, you can't expect him to have 28 goals and 8 assists again like he did last season in the Bundesliga, but those numbers it's not something you see every day. This is a hell of a player we're talking about here. Rough start, but still only priced at $9.5 million, which is not bad for a premium striker compared to what we've seen in previous years. So yeah, I'm sticking with him. Definitely giving him a chance this week against West Brom. Definitely giving him a chance in the next couple weeks. Yeah, so not time to panic. And sounds like we're all saying Werner is the best option for now. Anybody else have any comments on Chelsea?
I mean, I hope they do
all right.
poorly from actual
from a real life perspective. I hope they have a poor season, but I don't see that happening with all these signings. And they're getting rid of Kepa. Finally, it looks like that Mendy deal's going through. So
I think it's going to be announced tomorrow, or depending on where you are, the 24th.
Yeah, so Kepa's done, so that might help them out a little bit. He cost them points again, but let's not talk about him. Let's move on to last but certainly not least, our game week 3 captain picks. You know what? Actually, before we do that, let's talk about my wildcard team a little bit here. So I took into consideration a lot of the stuff that we just went over. I played my wildcard this week. I wanted to keep it. The plan was to keep it, but dude, my team was doing so bad. I'm tied with Gasch, for fuck's sake, man. Like, I got to get my stuff together.
He's lucky. He's pretty lucky. Finished above in the past 2 seasons, everyone.
So, yeah, I decided to play the wild card this week. Like I said, I would have loved to hold on to it, but in FPL, sometimes you got to realize, and when things aren't going, sometimes you just got to take that leap and do it and switch it up, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I kept my goalkeepers the same, Ryan and Walton. I considered bringing in Emi Martinez, but his situation with his backups is a little murky. They're both I can't think of their names right now, but both the backups are pretty well rated, and it's not exactly clear who the number 2 is, so I couldn't do the 4.5, 4.0 backup strategy there. And then I considered having 2 4.5 keepers and rotating them. But I didn't want to have to. That's like flipping a coin every week and hoping you get it right. And I don't trust myself to do that. I just wanted a set and forget keeper with his backup. So there we go. Kept that the same. Still held on to Mitchell. It looks like he's going to be playing for a couple weeks for Palace. And when he stops playing, he's a 4.0. So it's not costing me any sleep. I brought in Dunn, another 4.0. He's been getting some minutes. Again, he's a 4.0. I'm playing 3 defenders most of the time. Don't expect much from him at all. Lamptey I brought in, so I was really stuck between Lamptey and KWP. But I went Lamptey. His offensive numbers looked a little better. And as always, I don't have the specific stats in front of me, but I went through them this week, and Lamptey excited me a little bit more. I'm sticking with that double Liverpool, Robertson and Trent. Liverpool's defenses looked a little shakier in years past. Might not get those clean sheets, but with Thiago in and maybe solidifying that midfield now, maybe that'll change in the coming weeks. So yeah, still feeling good about that. And then I brought Salah back in. I had him for game week 1, took him out, and decided that he's going to be my guy for the foreseeable future. I was also thinking between him and Mane. That's another tough decision, kind of like the KDB Sterling decision. I think that's a similar toss up there, but I'm going Salah. I'm going with De Bruyne, of course. Going with Foden, as I talked about before, and Podence, as I talked about before, and James, as I talked about before. So won't really touch on them anymore. Werner, I just talked about. Feeling good about him still. And then Che Adams, is he unlucky or is he bad? I was hoping that he's unlucky, so I'm just giving him a couple more weeks because with the amount of chances he's getting at 5.9, he's still worth holding on to and worth giving that chance, in my opinion. I do have the 0.1 in the bank, so I could have upgraded him the 0.1 to Mitrovic at 6.0. But Adams is getting more touches in the box and more attempts, so I'm just feeling better about that. And Mitrovic, they could not get the ball to him. They could not get him any service towards the end of that second half this weekend. I just don't trust Fulham to be able to involve him in their attack on a consistent enough basis. He's a solid player. He's fun to watch. He's a really like a complete number 9 that you expect. But I just don't see Fulham giving him the service. So I stuck with Adams. And then I wanted a Leeds cover, so I went with Bamford. Again, debated on him a lot because I wanted like maybe Klitsch in the midfield, or maybe is it Klitsch or Cleach, whatever. I wanted him in the midfield. I wanted Costa in the midfield, maybe. I was shuffling it around a lot, but once I went with Podence, I knew I wanted my Leeds cover still, so I went with Bamford up front. He is somebody that might get replaced in the coming weeks. They just signed Rodrigo for like £44 million, I believe. So you don't spend £44 million on somebody just to ride the bench. So he's definitely part of the plans for Bielsa moving forward. But as long as Bamford has a spot, I'll keep using Bamford, and I'll be able to possibly upgrade him to Rodrigo because there's only like a 0.2 difference in their prices right now. So with a couple of price rises, I should have that in the bank, and I can even do that if it looks like that's happening. So yeah, that's my wildcard team. Like I said, I had to do it. Just sometimes you just got to pull the trigger and go for it. So that's what I did, and there it is. And let's go on to our captain picks finally here. So what are we doing? Are we doing like 3 picks each or 1 pick each? What do we want to do here?
Well, you only choose one captain in FPL, so.
Right, I thought we said something like we wanted to like come up with a few more. My bad. Yeah, so everybody picked their one captain and give us a little bit of insight into why you're picking that way. So C4, you want to get us started?
To me right now, it's between Salah and Harry Kane. And if you have to threaten me with a kick to the nuts, I'd probably pick Salah right now. Just because if you're looking over the last 2 seasons, Kane's only returned once against Newcastle, which was late last year, while Salah has returned twice over the last 2 seasons against Arsenal. Sorry, in 2 separate matches. I think it was a brace in one match and then a goal and assist in another.
I think, if I remember back to the Community Shield, Salah did not have a good game against Arsenal. That's something that's preventing me from giving Salah the armband personally.
It's Salah.
Because it is Salah, but it's also against my Arsenal. Is this game at the Emirates or Anfield?
It's at Anfield.
Yeah, it's at Anfield.
It is at Anfield. Well, not that really matters with the fans anyway. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm not going with Salah. It matters a little bit, but not as much, especially with a place like Anfield with that atmosphere. That definitely makes a difference when you have fans there. But yeah, I'm not going with Salah for that reason. I think I am going to pull the trigger and go with Werner. The numbers just look too good against West Brom. It's just way too enticing of a matchup. Maybe I'll give KDB some consideration, but as of right now, Werner's my pick. Tazz?
Same, I think it's hard not to consider Salah somebody who was like almost virtually fixture proof, but Arsenal did beat Liverpool in the last 2 meetings. They were home though in Arsenal, so that's kind of something I kind of strayed me away.
They're both post restart though, so they're both without fans, both in similar. They're both like a month. So
yeah, exactly. That's like something that I considered. And that's why kind of not going with Salah. I'm with you in terms of considering KDB and Werner. For me, it's a little bit more close. This is more of a 50-50 toss-up. Man City was strong against Wolves team, and I think they're going to be strong against the Leicester team that's kind of in the equal, equally as good as the Wolves team that Man City faced. And I believe, after having after game week 1 blank, it's kind of like a warm-up game for them, and I think City's going to hit the ground running from here on now. So it's kind of hard for me not to consider KDB, but Werner's numbers do look really good. So it's going to be maybe a late Friday night decision for me.
Yeah, I know that City won 3-1, and it was 2-1 until the final minutes there. But they really looked good against Wolves. They dominated almost the whole match, in my opinion. Yeah, so KDB is definitely a good shout. Gash, who you going with?
I am also at a toss-up at the moment between Werner and Salah. The thing that's putting me towards Werner as my captain is that I think if Emery were still coaching Arsenal, I would definitely go Salah. But I think Arteta has
Yeah,
like a much more he has the team much more compact and organized, and I could really see that that Liverpool Arsenal game being like a 1-0 or like a 2-1 or not like a very high scoring game like. A lot of people are bringing up the Liverpool Arsenal games in the past couple of years, how they have been traditionally high scoring, and I think that people are going to be surprised. And I mean, I'm sticking my neck out here and saying I don't think it's going to be a high scoring one, and then it's going to happen, and then one of our friends is going to text me and tell me I'm an idiot for saying this on a podcast. But anyway, I think I'm going to go probably with Werner, just based on the numbers we discussed before.
yeah, the matches have been high scoring.
More.
What's up?
That makes me want to captain Salah more, just to prove you guys wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
I just want to be able to see
the matches. The matches between Liverpool and Arsenal have been high scoring in the past, but that's been with different managers. That's been with an old Wenger with a pretty crappy team, and Emery with a pretty crappy team. This Arsenal team is looking a lot different under Arteta, and yeah, I don't think we're going to see. I think they just said today actually is the 1-year anniversary of that 5-5 match they had in the League Cup together last season. So yeah, I don't think we're going to be seeing anything crazy like that. Yeah, so Werner's my pick, like I said. Yeah, any final points that you guys want to make? Everybody good? All right, everybody, enjoy this game week. Good luck to all our listeners. I wanted to shout out who's in first place in our FPL league right now. So let me just pull up our FPL Hotline league. We got how many people joined? Shout out to everybody who joined. We got 72 people in our league, so I'm pretty happy with that for a first year doing it. So just shout out to Nick Hayes. His team name is I'm Above You, and yeah, he is above everybody. He's in first place. Congratulations, Nick. I'll see if you hold on to it. Yeah, so good luck everybody this game week. Enjoy the matches. Yeah, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks, Tazz. Thanks, Gash. Thanks, C4. And thanks, everybody, for listening. Follow us on social media for daily content, and we'll see you guys soon. Peace.
Yeah.